You're going to talk about a magnificent thing called ballot images.
Thank you, Lori. And thank you, Bob. And, you know, I had the pleasure to be in Wisconsin, too. I took 2 teams up there. And it was pretty startling. Before I go into the images, just a couple of my footnotes on Wisconsin is that I took with me a really incredible lawyer out of Washington, D.C., named Chris Sauter. And Chris has been doing elections since, I guess, about 1984. And he was in Florida when that bad decision happened that he advised against. He was Al Franken's attorney in Minnesota. That was a $15 million recount, 800 lawyers. And you know, getting back to Wisconsin, when I was up there, you know, the minute I found out that counties had a choice, or municipalities, to hand count or machine count, I said, after watching Madison do a great job hand counting and seeing the procedure, we focused on the counties that did not hand count. They did a machine count. But I want you to know something, to how bad this thing really is that most of the work was in prepping for the hand count or the machine count. They had to take all the ballots. They had to sort them out and separate. They had to go ahead, if there was an extra 2 ballot, come up with a system to discard those ballots or whatever. And really, the hand counting was the simplest part. The machines that they counted with were terribly slow, okay? Hand counting, I mean, my God, if after they did all this work prepping, which they had to do, then all they had to do is, okay, let's make a pile of ballots for Trump, let's make a pile of ballots for Hillary, and let's make the other ones, and then count them. Instead, they ran up these machines that maybe did 10 to 12 ballots per minute, is all they did. And yeah, like Bob, I'm very suspicious of Milwaukee. That was organized chaos, okay? Waukesha, if you've ever been to Wisconsin and you've been in an election, you've been Waukesha'd. That's what they call it. You remember the election where the election director took the ballots home and said, oh my God, look what I found, or whatever process they had. It was just a heck of a situation. Other than that, I think that they have a pretty good system up there. And I like how Wisconsin, the people who did hand count, but it only turned out that half of them were hand counted. And it's like a really interesting choice. You know, you're innocent and you're guilty, and you got a choice. You can confess and show how good you are by hand counting, and you can just machine count if you're guilty and prove nothing. That's what it was. And in the very beginning, once I realized that, you know, I talked to Stein twice, I said, hey, we're getting ripped off. It's like going to an to an ATM machine and getting the same results twice. What makes you think it's going to be different? Secondly, where they did hand count, the error rates was atrocious. So I'll go a little bit into my presentation, so I'm going to go into mine. AUDIT-AZ is a group that's been around a long time, 13 years. I consider myself to be a election integrity activist, or at least I was, because, you know, I realized that the solution really is transparency. And now I am an election transparency activist because of what we know now that we can do. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead on to the next slide here. That's our mission, same mission since the very beginning. And, you know, voter suppression, election fraud, gerrymandering are very serious issues. Our focus has been based basically on taking the black box and turning it into a transparent box. And that's what these ballot images can do for us. You know, the Kennedy, I'm from Maine, Massachusetts, the Kennedy family, and, you know, I found this statement, and I just think it's so incredibly true, that we are the boss, and we deserve what we get. But, you know, when he wrote that book and he did what he did, he said that before that our votes were, you know, computerized, privatized, and outsourced, because we have been outsourced. I have a document. You know, it's going to be very hard for me to be able to explain. That's why I got a PowerPoint here. But this is online, and I have extra copies here. It's a 25-page report, 107 links. And I'm not going to be able to tell you the stories about how bad your election in California was in the primary, and that you were stacked, you were stripped, and at the very end, they started flipping because the last 35% of the vote was not audited. I can go into stories about Massachusetts, and I'll do that one real quick. I've done Massachusetts twice before the primary. When I did the primary in Massachusetts, and I do audits, you know, audit, our group name is AUDIT, stands for Americans United for Democracy, Integrity, Transparency, and it actually came out of an audit. Massachusetts has 351 municipalities. I've done their elections twice, like I said. And I knew that on special elections, 68 to 72 of these municipalities hand counted their vote. And so I said, well, I can't wait to get into this data. So I dug in real hard, pulled up all 10351, and I found that Bernie Sanders lost the state of Massachusetts by 1.42%. He lost every college town, every municipality of a large size that was run by a group that runs elections for 5 states in New England, okay? And by the way, the 68 hand counts, which equaled 2% of the vote, he won by 17.9%, okay? I analyze elections all across the country. That's what I do. And sometimes I don't have to be there. I just have to know the laws and get a hold of the data. And so there really are some severe things. And like I said, all of those stories you're going to find in this thing. And I urge you, if you're from California, read the stack, strip, and the flip. Then you're going to realize how lucky you are to have Ray Lutz in this state to do what he did in San Diego. Because he did discover that the front end was stacked. I got to tell you real quickly the story. Election night, I went to a conference in California, in LA, and they said, John, would you go ahead and help analyze, because we know your work, Mimi, Kenny, and others. I said, yeah, I'll do that. And so election night, I'm doing my snapshots, I'm pulling the data in, and I'm saying, oh my God, Bernie's getting wiped out. He's losing by 26 points. So I got halfway through, and I stopped. Opened a bottle of wine, and I got a little loaded, cooked dinner, went to sleep, and the next morning I woke up, and I go, oh my God. He's only ahead by 13% now. And I go, oh my goodness. If you look at the precinct vote, okay, he only lost it by 2%. But 500,000 people were forced into provisional ballots because they were micro-targeted, okay? And then they call the election, and they say, okay, now we're going to do the random audits. We're going to audit the first 65% of the vote. Okay? Well, how does the stack work? Most of the state and your larger municipalities here don't look at the vote by mail signatures. They have a machine that does it. Okay? And secondly, if those Russians or whoever it was hacking these voter databases, maybe they were after your signatures. And maybe in some of these places who does look at the signatures, they don't look at the envelope, it's a picture of an envelope. So how do they know that they weren't looking at a picture of a picture? This vote by mail is another problem on the horizon. And I work very close with Bev Harris, and we're very suspicious, and we understand how these machines rank out or whatever. So the point is that you do have a problem, and I know that Jim's going to go partly into this because some really bad things are happening in legislation that they want to protect the right to cheat, and they want to keep that 35% as the adjustment number. Okay, because once they go ahead and stack the front end, and that machine knows, oh, you're voting for somebody, oh, gee, we're going to have to look at your vote by eye. So it may be counted after the election. That is what micro-targeting is. You got to remember, during the election, didn't somebody, Bernie found a back door in his database into the Hillary's because they used the same database. That's in there. It's a pretty incredible document that I've probably spent 6 months in it, and like I said, it's probably a little mini book, and I'm ADD, so it really couldn't be much longer than that. I mean, only 25, but it's in links. So anyway, do pull that down. Okay. We all kind of know the problems that we have here: decentralization, machines hacking, this software crap with these corporations, and all these other things. Those are the problems. We need to start working really towards the solutions and how we can go ahead and overcome these things. These are the statistics. We have 200 million registered voters. We have 13,000 voting jurisdictions. We have 187,000 precincts. We have 52 different models of voting equipment, okay? And like I said, it's all mostly in the hands of private enterprise. And that is a huge problem. This is a quote, and it talks about the machines, and so I'll let you go ahead and read it. I don't want to read it for you, but it's certainly a very big problem that we have to go ahead and deal with. This one right here is this was at DEF CON. I met Jake, And he's the one who organized the village and suggested he used to work in the Obama White House. And you know, anybody who, like he says, anyone who says that they're unhackable is either a fool or a liar. Because that's what it really comes down to. No, we really do know that. We know that when the Help America Vote Act passed in 2002, that they passed it and there was no security, okay? You know, the whole system was really run by a system of, you know, hiding this information. We know that the logic and accuracy test, as far as I'm concerned, they're a joke. Volkswagen proved that, didn't they? My God, they built what, 600,000 diesel vehicles? And it would pass emissions every time? Well, what makes you think that the election directors, when they said, I mean, John, we know the system is really good because we did a logic and accuracy test before and after. Well, it's a program, and it's going to work right at this moment. You can go ahead and set up the parameters of that. And that is what we fear is happening, and that's why we have to have real auditing, and that we really have to go ahead and deal with this. Security through obscurity. Like I said, that's a heck of a trick. That means don't tell anybody it's hackable. That's what it is. Like I said, when they put the whole system together, that is basically how it was built. The security was, first off, when we go into ballot images, you need to understand how the old system worked. Okay? We were all in school in the United States, most likely, and you took the Iowa test. And that Iowa test was a little bubble, and you took a pencil and you marked it. You made a mark, and IBM invented a program that would sense the technology, and it would sense it. Okay? That's how the old system worked. There's really good news. It's gone. It's gone extinct. And that opens an opportunity for you and us that makes me very excited. Because you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. Very famous man who did that quote, okay? A man not so famous below said, ballot images change that model, and that's why they're hiding and destroying them. They are destroying them. They are hiding them. These images, working with hand-marked paper ballots, were first started being used in Florida. Why Florida? Well, Florida and Arizona are really two really great corrupt states. I'm in Arizona, and I always tell people the difference between elections in Arizona and Florida is like the people who ran them, the developers. And you know, these developers, in the very beginning, one sold swampland and the other one sold desert. In fact, they were the same people who went back and forth, okay? And so the gamesmanship that's played there is quite serious. And so basically is that if we're going to go ahead and make a change, we're able to go ahead and do it because the new technology is here. Digital images, okay? What you're looking at right now is the DS-850 and the DS-200, okay? In fact, those are the machines that were used in Milwaukee and Waukesha and other counties. And in Arizona, we have 11 of our 15 counties are using machines to create images. Fact is, 10 of them are of this right here. Once Maricopa switches, which they will switch in the next couple of years, will probably be 98%. I am projecting right now, in this country right now, 40% of all the machines are creating ballot images. Michigan just switched over. I would say by 2020, 80 to 85% of all hand-marked paper ballots in this country will be ballot imaged. Now I want to explain how these kind of ballot images work. And right here is a, oops, let me go back because I was trying to get a video to play here, and I don't know why it didn't play. Because I want to see, this is a DS-850. It does about 300 ballots per minute, okay? And you can see it's actually, on this upper part, it's actually taking a picture of both sides of the ballot at the same time. It's also putting a number onto the ballot, if the inkjet is installed, okay? And it's putting a special number on the image, and it's mating them for auditing, because it was a banker's machine originally, because they got to track the documents. In fact, all these digitals are made to do this. Oh, they see it went to the top slot, it made a bad shot. and it's going to say, oh, you're going to redo me again, okay? And it's quite fast, it's quite efficient, and it really does work pretty good for marrying the ballot image or pegging it to the actual ballot for auditing. And you know, the interesting about it is I'm going to go to the next machine right now. This is the DS200. It's a lot slower. It only does 12 ballots per minute. Both of these I shot, by the way, in Wisconsin. The 850 I did in Waukesha, and then I did this in St. John's or something on the other side of the state. And this one does about 12. You see it stop. It's actually taking a picture. It's a slower process. And if it's not right, it will ship it back up, say, no, I didn't take right, or whatever. And so, because we're going to get how important these images really, really are, okay? And here's an image, okay? As you can see, there is the decision. Now this stuff up over here, they purposely do the background, the ballot, the blurry, because they don't want it to recognize that it's just language or information or whatever. And this is the serial number 1443. I stands for image, okay? And then you have, this is a cast vote record. And how they identify that is serial number 1433, same number, but it has a C. C for cast vote record. And that's just for one ballot. And now I'm going to take you and show you how they put it into the database, because I love this database, because I used to work with the Debolt databases, and they were pure garbage. I mean, they were so easy to manipulate. You know, I must have spent thousands of hours looking at these databases, because my county was Debolt, and on that. Now, this is the cast vote record, and this one has 176,450 rows of voted records. One row is the complete ballot. And if it's a primary, well, you can have 4 different parties running. You could start off at A, and it could end up at HH. But one row is one ballot. Now, there should be a hyperlink there, and you click on it, and it pops up the image. And you can actually take the image and match it. And you know, I'm honored that Bev Harris has turned around and called this the Brakey method, because I've been playing with images for a long time, and it's not a thing I invented, I didn't, okay? But it could be used to go ahead and to prevent election fraud, because we want to take away their impunity to steal, okay? Preserve and make the public ballot image, peg the ballot image to the actual ballot with numbers, make sure the ballots are a public record so any person can look at them. What do we want them to do? We want them to take the images per precinct and put them online, and then people like us can say, I'll tell you what, I'm going to download my precinct ballots, and then I'm going to go online and get an app. And then I'm going to take one image and print it out, and then I'm going to fill out my app. And then I'm going to watch my computer count. Not one race, all 20. Okay? And then when I get done with that, then I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to use Phil Stark's random audit system. And I'm going to go ahead and pick a few images and go down there and say, hey, see that number 1433? I want to match that, a couple, just to make sure they weren't photoshopped. Now, when I say photoshopped or whatever, is that, you know, hand-marked paper ballots are very unique because they're hand-marked. Every mark's a little different, little pressure, different ink, different scribble, you know, different colors. It could be all different ways or whatever. And so if we wind up putting a system like that together, then we've been successful at taking their impunity. And you know, advanced digital technology. The ballot image can be put online, like I said. And I want you to know, I didn't make that up. San Francisco did. They put out a request. And the answer that they sent from ES&S back, as you can see, it says all ballot images can be exported and posted to the department's website. Okay? Most of the country's destroying them. The people in San Francisco must be concerned about making elections, what? Transparent, trackable, chain of custody, and verified. That's a good thing, don't you think? That's what we need to have happen. That is where this thing can go. Now let me tell you what they're hiding. This stuff has been out for a long time. It was first used in Florida because Florida is not It does not have to use federally certified equipment like California. California is one state that you certify your own equipment, and I think it's great. I really do. Okay. In fact, I found a report that California looked at the ES&S 850 and the 200 and said, hey, there's no way they're coming into our state and they're going to go ahead and put these machines on the internet, because when they use a virtual private network with a SIM card built into it, okay, that's what we found happening in Wisconsin, is that they had SIM cards. And you know, I'm not worried really about Russians. I'm worried about insiders. One person in my state, and I've been doing it for 13 years, it took me 11 years to mold this guy out, that I had one guy who was programming in my state, and it's in this report I was telling you about. He was programming 13 out of the 15 counties, and he was being paid on a 1099 IRS format as a subcontractor or a special person, and you get paid on a 1099. That makes it harder to find this guy, okay? He was loading the databases through telephone phone modems, because that was the old system. If you had SIM cards, well, they could do it the same way, except it would go through the internet and load them. And you know, and that's what kind of blew me about Wisconsin when I did find out that they did have SIM cards built into the DS 850, 200, not the 850, the 200, is that I was quite shocked. I didn't want to believe it at first, because that's just the easiest way to be able to cheat as possible, because all you got to do is be the insider and have the code, and that's what we fight. But getting back to this, but look what it says. You know, it's a pretty dramatic statement. This system, when it first came out, in their advertising, they said, gee, this is a really good system for auditing and going ahead and adjudicating an election that's in trouble or it's too close. You want to, you know, really figure it out. Because with these images, you can set them up with the system and say, okay, we got a real close election. It's within 2 votes or whatever. We have to do a recount. So now let's start looking for the undervotes, and now let's look at voter intent. Because voter intent in a very close election is very important. And that's how this system was set up to use. Instead, they're destroying it. In a case in Tucson, Arizona, I had to sue Pima County because they made me believe for 3 elections they were saving. I was asked by a friend not to go ahead and file litigation. Let him go ahead and do his thing and see if he can work something out, because maybe we don't have to sue him, Brakey. You're too quick to sue people. Well, only governments, really, you know. Must be a little crazy for doing that. I've got about 13 of them in the last 13 years. Last year I did 3. I sued the whole state of Arizona over what happened in Maricopa, suppression of 150,000 people. Bernie Sanders wins the precinct vote by 59%. Hillary Clinton wins the vote by mail by 60. Then the provisionals come in, Bernie wins those by 63. So which 2 out of the 3 pollsters are you going to believe? Because as a rule of large numbers, you don't have splits of 40%. You just don't have it. Usually your precinct vote and your vote by mail comes together like this. I used to say, oh my God, look at this. This one's 6% off. No, this is, you know, pretty incredible stuff when it comes right down to it. You know, this right here, I think is pretty interesting. I mean, like I said, this goes into the fact that this is from the San Francisco proposal. The DS-850 scanner produces a digital image and a cast vote record that is tied together via an index number sprayed onto the ballot. Like I said, they're removing the inkjets. Okay? This provides greater transparency and potentially for RLA to be conducted on ballot images rather than physical ballot if desired. You could do both. And you know how much it would cost? Put it online, let the people know what's going on. Because I'll say this, you know, I am a Democrat. I'm maybe not a very proud one. I used to be years back. And you know, now I'm a populist, progressive, socialistic leaning, and I'm still a Democrat. And I just became a precinct committee man because I think there's a chance that our party has fallen so low that we should be able to say to them, hey, make elections transparent, trackable, and publicly verified. I was at a meeting in Chicago in 2006 with Mimi Kennedy, Brad Freeman, and we were dealing with all the heavyweights of the lawyers of the Democratic Party. And they all said, if people really knew that these elections were no good, you know what we fear? They'll stop voting. No, Brakey, no, Brad, you need to help us get more people to vote. not happening. I think a lot of people are waking up and saying, what am I doing? I'm voting in a system that's a black box. And basically, maybe I'm wasting my time, and because they think I voted a certain way, that we're giving them things to do. I think that the Democratic Party needs pressure. The Democratic Party needs to know that we demand elections that are transparent, trackable, and publicly verified, or maybe we just might stop voting. Again, it's in here. And I want you to know that we are working on a proposal nationally, and I don't know why that jumped like that all of a sudden. Let me get back to where I was. But we are working on a proposal that we're trying to put together a plan to go into 15 states and put teams out there to go out there to educate, to go out there, investigate, and to turn around and get ready to litigate. Because these are public records and they're ours. And we want it. We want elections that are verified, not verifiable, verified. Because that's the only way we're going to de-corrupt our system. And with that, I want to thank you all, and I hope that you read this thing and do something new. Thank you, Lord. And I'll get rid of this now.
Thank you very much, John. I just want to say that I've been so impressed by seeing the work you've done on ballot images, and I was so dismayed to find out that many election officials are erasing them.
Well, you know, if I just add one thing to
Yeah.
that, I got to tell you what my judge said in the case, okay? This is really kind of cute. You know, my judge in this case was not really super computer literate. And he said to the prosecution, to the defense team, Pima County, he said, Pima County, let me ask you a question. I'm not computer literate. But if you take voted ballots and then you make photocopies of those voted ballots, what makes you think you can destroy them? They're in the chain of custody. They're a public record the minute they were put out there. And these images are anonymous the minute it hit the ballot box, okay? And then they made arguments and said, well, gee, you know, somebody could sell their vote. Well, what I said, well, good, we should stop vote by mail. That way the guy can't come to your house and pay you for it, okay? Well, what happens if they write their name on it? Well, I guess they broke the law. Why should I not have a right to be able to verify our democracy? There is no argument for not getting these things. By the way, it's just a matter of time before you guys get them. Right now, you only have 2 counties that have them. You're one of the lowest states that do have this, you know, for your size. And I predict by 2020, somebody's going to cough up $500 million, because I imagine that's what it's going to cost. I do hope that you're all wise enough to make sure that when you do get these machines, don't buy a $6,000 pencil. And what I mean by that is they want to sell you machines that will make the mark for you. That's easier to forge. We want your mark on those ballots. And by the way, they'll save a lot of money, because $6,000 pencils are very expensive because you need a lot of pencils in a precinct. And it's not verifiable in my book because the images can be played with. Again, I'm sorry for taking more time. Thank you.
And deregistering voters. That's what's happening. And don't believe that somehow the early voting is distorting things. The early voting is in the exit polls.
If I could just add one thing about that, because I work on statistics all the time, and you know, one thing the average citizen can do is to look at your vote by how it came in. Meaning, when I examine an election, I look at, okay, here is all the vote by mail, and I want to bring it how it was done. And then I look at the precinct vote. And then I look at and say, wow, 40 points different. There's something wrong. And then you look at the election and you start saying, if I was a hacker, an insider, where would I steal where I have impunity? Because that's what they look at. You know, I've been doing this for 13 years, and I'm getting pretty damn good at being able to tear a system apart. And then I look at it, well, that theory doesn't work too good because that would take a lot of people, okay? If I can't get it down to 1 or 2 people in a machine, okay, then we got a problem. So basically, give a quick example. You know, I told you about Bernie and Hillary, the 39-point spread. We had an election. Our governor is a cokehead in Arizona. Now, when I talk about cokehead, I'm talking about the Koch brothers, okay? And so I got you there, huh? You know, it's just like me saying, you know, I'm no longer an election integrity activist because I know the system has no integrity. I'm an ET. Now, you're probably thinking extraterrestrial. No, it's election transparency. It's the solution. Anyway, you can look at the numbers and you're going to say, well, look at this. In this part of the vote, which is not auditable, because when they run these high-speed scanners, they run thousands of ballots. They're not sorted, and they are just big boxes. And you know, you could be in LA where they got 2,500 precincts or something, and you have a box that holds 1,000 ballots. You can have one ballot for each one. It's an easy steal. If you can't get at them and you can't look at them, you're depending upon a machine to make that decision. And so I call it looking for the splits. How did they split away? Because you use the rule of large numbers. When you have large numbers, you'll see a trend. That's what I used to see. That's where you want to look and watch out, because eventually they're going to get rid of the precincts. And when they do that, you're really in trouble. Okay? And it's going to be easier because, you know, every election I find just a little different tweak that's going on. And, you know, this whole 2016 election cycle, boy, they did use that voter database. They really did. And to me, the heist was done at the primary. It was the year of the outsider. Of course, Hillary was painted as a consummate insider, and Trump was the outsider. And of course, they feared one big person. That was Bernie Sanders. To me, the election was stolen from Bernie. If it was an up-and-up election, Bernie would be president right now. And the numbers show it if you look into the primary. His book right here, The Strip and Flip, lays a lot of it out. Time it got to California and Arizona, they added the stack to it.
Okay, sure.
So that's my point.
And this is the this is the Trump edition.
Oh, it is? Okay.
This is the second edition, which does have the recount in it. Thank you.
And how many came in afterwards? We have to dig it up. So there's a lot of digging that needs to be done. And so the answer is, I don't know.
I know a little bit about Washington. Okay, and I want to tell you how I know. In the court case in Tucson, Arizona, since it was a new issue with these ballot images, they went ahead and they turned around and said, what state can we use to benchmark off of? And they choose the state of Washington because their constitution says you can't look. Okay? And then I called up and I had a long talk with Bev Harris. And, you know, Jim March, when we were getting these ballot images, well, you know, let's look at other states. And we said, let's look at the state of Washington. Boy, there's a good suit up there. And he says, you know, maybe we ought to contact people so we get a suit going up there. And Bev said to me, no, John, bad idea. Do you know who runs the system in the state of Washington that tracks every ballot image? Bob Gates. Not Bill Gates, Bob Gates, the defense secretary. Okay? And by the way, it looks, and I haven't seen it, and it's not a fact because I didn't see it with my own eyes, but from what I understand, that they have secret barcodes on the ballot and it has your name on it. And that's the reason that you can't look. They're tracking. And this is a pretty hissed thing because I do believe that we have the right to a secret vote. And that's why Pima County choose to use the state of Washington, saying we use their constitution because this is a new thing. And because it's too new. Nobody's sued on this except for me thus far. And we want to do it all over. But Washington was a bad idea because, you know, if you want to deal with Bob Gates and their whole secret thing and all that right there, you know, I'll tell you the truth, I think I'm more fearful of Bob Gates than I am fearful of the Russians, okay? And, you know, so we decided not to go ahead and endeavor into that. My advice was given to me, John, you're doing a great job. Work in areas where you have a chance of winning, and you might not get killed either, okay? And that was kind of the advice. But it is something to be concerned about. And Oregon, the only thing I know is that they do, and I think I have one thing also to clear up with the question, is that if you want to find the document, you can go on Trust Vote site. It's on their site with a hyperlink that will take you to this document that you can download. Please, if you really want to get an inside view from a person who spent 13 years, it's really 13 years of work in this thing, to be able to give me the rear view mirror to be able to look historically back. by working with distinguished people like these people here, all these, and others I work with across the country. It's important that we all learn to be really what I like to be. I call myself, and there's some people, first off, when I heard it, I didn't like it. You know, a newspaper said, well, you know, Brakey's really quite the social gadfly. And I go, holy smokes, they're calling me a gadfly. And I don't like it. So, but before I get mad, I think I better Google it. And I Googled it, and I go, well, if the shoe fits, I'm going to wear it. I'm proud to be a social gadfly, and I walk around and I teach the 7 C's. The 7 C's are pretty simple. Character, capacity, credibility, civility. I call you a bad name real nicely, okay? Citizenship, our rights. Country. I love my country, okay? But the big C is courage. But before you step up and get arrested or do something, because I'm a big fan of Naomi Klein, no is not enough. It really isn't. We really do have to go ahead and stand up. But before you decide to do something stupid, you say to yourself, what kind of a character has the capacity to do something really stupid and destroy your credibility? Because that's basically all I have to sell. And that's where my value is my credibility. And if I do make a mistake, I'll be the first one to stand up and say so. But I'm very careful to make that decision. So I'm proud to be one, and Ray Lutz is, and I think you're quite a social gadfly too, justice gadfly, and all of us are. Because we need to be, as Socrates once said, the one that comes around and stings them right on the ass and give them some reality and wake up our neighbors and do what we can. Because we are running out of time. I really believe that if we don't take back the elections by 2018 and 20, and use what we know and be proactive, that we're going to be in a situation when 2020 comes around, they're going to redistrict again, because there's 3 problems in this arena. Election fraud is real. Gerrymandering is the third one. The second one that is a real problem is voter suppression, very real. And now with voter suppression, they're micro-targeting. They're using the voter database. We can deal with the first 2. They only can deal with the redistricting by 2021 after the census comes and they start dividing. Because really, I would say that is the big rob, is that when you know that more people voted Democrat in the House of the United States than Republicans, but they control a large majority, and that is because they know how to draw the districts because they're in power. We have to take that back. That's hope. And so if you're not a social gadfly, I hope you become one, because we love being that. And to stand up. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, the question is, which 15 states do you plan to go into, investigate, educate, and litigate to make ballot images public? Well, I have a couple of states I want to tell you what the criteria is. I'm not going to name them because I want everybody to be a little paranoid out there. Okay? Because, you know, I find that sometimes paranoia is a pretty good thing when you're an election official, because, or whoever's doing this, because they do steal with impunity. And when I say impunity, I mean they know they're not going to get caught. It's like, you know, having a devil on this side, an angel over here, and the devil says, hey, you can do it, you're not going to get caught. And the angel says, hey, you might get caught. You know? And they're going to say, by who? Who's looking? Nobody knows what's going on. You know, this system is built to steal. Really, you know, from what I see. But I'll tell you what the criteria are. Okay? It's not going to be a very deep red state. It's not going to be a deep blue state. Because when absolute power is held by one party for a long time, they control the judiciary, and that is one of the biggest focus. What is the litmus test that we're looking at? Voter registration is one item. How easy it is to vote and register in your state, okay? How judges are appointed, because realistically, we're looking to make good law, and that's where we want to be careful where we go. And because, you know, if you go into a case and you got cheated in the trial court, do you want to appeal and take a loss on to the next level? Because in a trial court, it means nothing if you lose. It's the appellate part that has the most damage. So some people are dummies and they appeal even though they think they should win, and they're taking a chance. No, win and then let the other side appeal, because they will. And so we want to be selected into that right there. There are other litmuses that we're looking at, and so that's how the selection is going to be made. And of course, one of the selection is, do you have machines that produce these images? And it's shocking that California is probably one of the worst states that doesn't have them, and you will. I think it's, and you probably know more about that, because I guess it's what, $450 million or something like that for the state of California to make the switch, Jim?
It's
year.
Next year.
Yeah.
Well, we know one thing. You're going to get machines that make images because the old stuff is gone. Very good. That's a good thing about it. I'm done.
I also wanted to mention again something we could not put on the our thing. Trustvote.org is the organization that John, Bob, and I are connected with. Counted as cast.org is what Jim Soper is connected with. Electiondefensealliance.org is what Jonathan Simon is connected with, and freepress.org is what Bob Fitrakis is connected with. And we all connect with each other also, but I wanted to say that once more for the people online who are asking for that.
John Brakey.
Yeah, my site
And yes, thank you.
is electionnightmares.com because it really has been
Thank
a
you.
nightmare. And even though we're changing it back to AUDIT-AZ, and that if the this thing comes together, we'll have a new site called Audit Elections USA. And like I said, audit is an acronym, Americans United for Democracy, Integrity, and Transparency.
And John is also the editor of trustvote.org on Facebook and really keeps it up to date. And thank you, John.
So I'm very glad to do it.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so do we have any more questions? Or, so Laura Chamberlain over in Illinois is making a point to say that the data breach in the registration system in Illinois was not the Russians, and I think that's fine. I know that Americans also steal databases, and Melissa Data Systems was one of them in 2012. So I hope that addresses what you wanted to say, Laura. And I guess I made a mistake, although this other article says the Russians did it. And this is what always happens in this issue.
If I could just jump one more thing on here, is that, I was very early on, and, I sued the state of Arizona, and I claimed that the database was breached. And I started doing research, and I started getting, because since I hooked up with the Sanders campaign, I was contacting their IT guys. And then all of a sudden, Seth Rich dies. Now, Seth Rich, everybody knows who he was. He was the head of voter outreach for the DNC in Washington, D.C. And I said to myself after he was murdered, my God, he's a guy that I'd want to talk to, because he must have been getting all the phone calls from the IT guys saying, hey, I just had thousands of people that were Democrats a week ago, and they went to vote. They found out they were libertarians or they're independents, mostly in states with closed primaries, okay? And I'll tell you, it happened in this state, okay?
Big time.
Big time. And, a lot of people don't know this. I'll tell you other statistics. This whole report I have in this document. How many people here realize that over 1 million people who voted in that primary never voted for a presidential candidate? That's amazing, isn't it? You knew that. Yeah. It's amazing numbers. I mean, I never saw something so bizarre, and that's why, like I said, that's why I call it the stack, and I borrowed the strip, the strip and the flip, and because it really fit. They just improved on your model, Bob.
Well, as you recall, I came in ahead of time because
Yeah.
many of us were predicting exactly what was going to happen here, as it happened in Ohio and happened in New York, the systematic sabotage of the Sanders campaign. Also, I would be remiss in pointing out we really need to look at the 1996 Times cover.
Here's the cover. You can find it by Googling 1996 Times cover Boris Yeltsin.
Bragging about how Americans went over and rigged the Russian election and got one of the most unpopular, chronically drunk men on earth, Boris Yeltsin, elected, even though he may have only had a 2% approval rating, but a $10.5 billion loan from the IMF, which allowed him to systematically buy votes everywhere. So I don't know where the Russians got an idea to intervene at all in our election, but probably from the fact that we've spent the entire Cold War period, Remember in the 1970s, when they went before Church's committee, the CIA, they admitted to, quote, 5,000 benign operation. A benign operation is election rigging, which they thought was far better than a bloody, vicious coup where you kill 800,000 ethnic Chinese in '65 in Indonesia. So, I mean, a lot of this stuff, it's not just the Russians we got to worry about. Look at Seidel. Who invests in Seidel? Carlyle Group, Booz Allen Hamilton. I mean, you've got a company counting the overseas vote that's very close to the CIA and mysteriously came out of the Free University of Barcelona. I mean, trace the provenances of these companies. I mean, the Rosevich brothers, where did they come from? Chuck Hagel, for God's sake, part owner, of the predecessor to ES&S. So, as much as we need to box out the Russians, we need to get the keys back to our election from the small group of private, corporate, partisan enterprises, that can rig these elections. The elections belong to the people.
Here's one good question I'm going to take, and it's, can we find a smoking gun and blow away the election manipulation?
Oh, the whistle.
Whistle. We do. And we take it to the Attorney General's office. I've taken 3 or 4, okay? And it's incredible. In 2015, there was a bond election in Pima County, and I went down there and I filmed it. And I filmed them doing the logic and accuracy test. It's the first time we used the 850. And in 2008, I helped pass a law with a Republican to put cameras in all of the election departments so we could see what was going on. So I'm sitting there and I go, I'm going to turn on my TV, I'm going to write this report, I'm going to plug my computer, and I'll watch that election department just for the heck of it. My God, I caught him breaking and entering into the system. I couldn't believe it. First off, after the logic and accuracy, we put seals and we take all the stuff, we put it in this box, and nobody's supposed to go in there, okay? And so I go, oh my God, what am I going to do? I got it on film. I took my camera, I was snapping pictures, and I got the film from them eventually. And I went down there and I saw the election director in the backyard. He said, Mr. Nelson, I need to talk to you. And he says, what is it, Brakey? And he says, hey, I want to question, is those cameras really live? He says, John, our camera system is so good if a mouse ran across the floor, it turns the camera on. I said, well, good. Here's a picture of you guys breaking into the system. And he goes, what? Well, he didn't know that I knew that he was in the room too, because after they broke in, they went out and got him and brought him in. He went up to the computer, looked, and he goes, good. And then he gets in the chair and he goes, Louie loops. Then they print a report and all of that. Okay, so I go down there and I confront him. So he said, well, I'll go check it. It leaves me outside the door for 30 minutes. I should be able to go inside because they're in the machine. We have the right as the public to be there. So he comes out and he says, John, we're going to go ahead and we're going to redo that logic and accuracy test. Yeah, my guys did a dumb thing. They shouldn't have done it. I played dumb with him, And so we talked for a while. And so the next morning, all the media was there. And they're confronting him, and he stood up and he lied. And he said, well, why did a person go in? Until the reporter asked him, he says, well, the guy, even though he's been a long time, he forgot to print the 0 report. Well, that was a lie. I had the 0 report. It said 10:31, same time I filmed them making it, okay? And there was another lie I can't think offhand. It's in this report again, and also the link to the video you can watch him breaking and entering into. Okay, there was another bond election. Okay, that's what started me back after 2004. In 2006, I caught them rigging that bond election, and that's where they used the Harry Hersey hack. That means they took the memory cards and used positive and negative numbers. And it's not like I didn't have a confession. We did. We even had the machine that they used to rig it with, and the machine was only used for 2 things: measuring the moisture content of corn and rigging D-bolt memory cards. Okay? That was an 8-year case. Folks, you can't catch them afterwards. We got to be proactive. We got to take away their impunity. A lot of these people in these election departments, I see no evil, I speak no evil. I was in Maricopa one time, me and Jim March, and Jim's one of the best geeks I ever worked with, okay? And he finally fought to get his binoculars in there. Wouldn't let's have cameras, and he's looking at the wiring, and he's falling from this computer, and he's going around the room, and all I go, oh my God, it's plugged into a laptop, and there's a guy there. And so we made a big scene, and we said, hey, we want to bring in cameras, come over here, Mr. Stewart, come over, he still works there. You need to see this. Oh no, I'm not going to look. He walked away and ran. We were threatened to be arrested by Sheriff Joel Pyle's people, okay, making a scene. And this is the kind of stuff that goes on. And if we don't somehow make elections transparent, trackable, and publicly verified, we're in trouble. If we do not get on top of these goddamn vendors, okay, I mean, you talked on it real good, Jim. You laid it out really well. But these vendors, let's talk about it. They're programming the computer. Well, somebody's got to, I guess. I don't know why they have to. Then they're printing the ballot. Then they're mailing out the ballot. Then they're receiving the ballot. Then they're verifying the signature. My God, this is ridiculous. That's why that we have to fight to make elections transparent, trackable, publicly verified. I'm going to help everybody I can to pass legislation in different states. I'm going to go ahead, if we put this thing together, to have 3 people in each state. And I'd love to find a Jim, a Bob, and another Brakey, okay? And because we all come in at different angles, and to build that team to do that. And it's going to take to support a lot. And what you all can do in California, help Jim. Help him get this legislation handled.
Can we create a broad, comprehensive election reform that is unified, organizing the public to work together through state ballot initiatives, constitutional amendments, all of these various things she names various, the Brakey method, etc. Can we combine and come up with verifiable methods?
I think so, but it's going to take money. It's going to take dedicated people that are out there already who are working really hard, and to take them from semi-pro to pro, that is what we're going to try to do. It's not going to be cheap, but I guarantee it's going to be inexpensive, because if we don't, we got a real disaster. And that is parts that we're trying to create by using that method. And my dream is really to have 3 activists per state, and one has to be like a Jim. They got to watch these goddamn legislators like a hawk. You win in court, they're going to sneak right around, and they're going to try to pass some kind of a bill to stop. Okay? That's called bushwhacking. Some people call it politics. I call it bushwhacking, because if I was a representative and I knew nothing about the lawsuit in Tucson, and somebody brought me that bill, I said, yeah, it makes sense. Ballot images should be treated like ballots. Yeah. Well, they didn't, realize there was a suit going on, and it was a manipulation. I was another case that they went ahead and they were illegally storing the ballots. So what did they do? They passed a law to make it legal.
Counting money, that was easy. Corporate donations to his foundation. Conflicts of interest in the name of business. Scandals to the maxes. When are you gonna show your taxes? Count 140 characters in a tweet. Why can't you count out votes? 3 million vote lead should have been your defeat. Why can't you count out votes?